everyone, and welcome to this webinar entitled The Anatomy of a Modern Talent Acquisition Team. So my name is Peter Banks. I am the founder and MD of the HR Director, and we are a strategic resource for senior HR and people leaders in print, person, and online. Delighted today to partner with CPL's Talent Evolution Group, an expert multidisciplinary group who focus on executing the most evolved talent solutions and experiences for your business. So let's get underway. A little intro to this topic. So finding, attracting and retaining exceptional talent is crucial for an organization's success in today's competitive market. As traditional roles of recruiters and talent acquisition teams evolve, senior HR and TA leaders must adapt to stay at the forefront of the ever-changing talent landscape. The talent function of the future transcends conventional recruitment methods with automation, AI, machine learning, reducing repetitive tasks, and the focus is shifting to identifying candidates with the specific skills needed for particular roles. So the future of talent acquisition involves a variety of specialist roles that collaborate to attract, engage, and hire top talent, all while enhancing the organization's employer brand and aligning with its business strategy. So let's introduce our panel. Joining me today is Áine Fanning, who is Managing Director at CPL's Talent Evolution Group. So good morning, Áine.
Thanks for having us, Peter. Delighted to be here.
And also Rob Daly. So Rob is the Chief Customer Officer at CPL. So good morning, Rob.
Good morning, Peter. Thanks again for having us.
Right, thank you both for taking part. So let's find out a little bit more about you both, if I may. So Áine, could you tell us a little bit more about you, your role and your organization, please?
Sure. Well, I have worked in recruitment and talent for far too long than I'll admit to on a webinar. But I've been around the block and back again. And I guess I'm very fortunate to head up CPL's Talent Evolution Group, which is CPL's division, which looks after all our kind of programmatic and talent solutions across kind of MSPs and RPOs. And as you mentioned, you know, we are a multidisciplinary team with a variety of tasks and really have built the Talent Evolution Group based around the needs of our clients. And I guess this topic we're going to talk about today, the kind of the future talent function, is something that we started to build ourselves internally to meet those clients' needs. So we work across 25 different countries, and we have teams in multiple locations. And I guess we have a privilege of working with some of the leading global and multinational companies across Europe and across the globe. So delighted to be here today and share some of the learnings and journey that we've had so far.
Thanks, Áine. And Rob, could you also share a brief bio, please?
Sure, no problem at all. I equally won't share the length of service that I'm in recruitment, but I'm in CPL a long time, and I'm the Group Chief Customer Officer. I often like to say it's a fancy title, but really what it means is that as a group, we wanted to be customer first. And my role was to be the voice of that customer internally to see how we could change as an organization. And CPL really has kind of 4 pillars that we operate across. So I operate across all of those pillars, including Áine's, where I'm the voice of the customer internally, but also externally out when I'm working with customers around what CPL can do in its services operations. So delighted to be here again. Thanks, Peter.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rob. Okay, well, listen, let's get underway. So let's turn to our first question, if I may. So Áine, if I could start with you. So, you know, let's really start at the crux of this. So what does the talent function of the future look like? You know, just give us a flavor of your thoughts here.
Yeah, so, you know, as I mentioned earlier, you know, as we were on this journey, and I think, you know, Rob and I work very closely together and have worked across not just recruitment, but talent solutions for a very long time. And, you know, particularly in the last, say, 5+ years, we've started to see the sophistication and the complexity of the needs of our clients really change. And also the pace and technology and everything else that comes along with that. So what we started to find was that the role of, a recruiter or the role of a talent acquisition person, you know, there's kind of that superhero, you know, you talk about the 360 recruiter in the past, and it was this one person who was meant to be wonderful at pretty much everything and control the start to the finish of a recruitment process. But in reality, what we have nowadays is a completely different need, both from our clients, but from candidates in the market, from how we attract talent in the market. So what we've kind of built to meet those needs, and what we see kind of that shift towards what a future talent function should look like, is actually a diverse, multidisciplinary set of teams that come together to collaborate. So, we do have recruiters, we do have sourcers, we do have talent acquisition people that, are partnering with hiring managers and, taking them through the journey. But then we also have people who are focused in on talent insights, on market research. We have our own internal digital marketing team that is focused on recruitment and talent attraction. We've got teams of reporting and analytics. 5 years ago, people might have done a bit of reporting, but we now have teams that do this, that we're now building into live dashboards that, our clients are getting visibility and access to. So they're not emailing someone and kind of going, oh, do you know how many headcount we have on site in this area? They now have access to this information, and we take it a step further, because the big part now is not just having access to this information, but actually, how do we harness data? How do we interpret data? How do we get data analytics? There's some stat that by 2050, we're already managing such a large amount of data, but that's then set to 10x over the next few years. So we need to be ready for that future ready state. So really, I guess this, the talent of a modern talent acquisition team, or that kind of future talent function, is really the recognition that we are now moving beyond, one individual person with a multi-skill set to actually multiple people with a variety of skill sets that come together to blend, as you say, to attract talent, to assess talent, to screen talent, to onboard talent, to manage the compliance and regulatory aspects of talent. And all this while ensuring, the CX and the EX, the customer experience and the employee experience, and making sure that candidates are having a really positive journey as they're going through the recruitment experience. Like, we literally do have people that journey map the experiences of candidates in different programs. Again, 5-10 years ago, if I turned around to Rob or anyone else in the business and said, I want to hire someone who's just focused on ensuring a really positive experience, they probably would have looked at me like I was crazy. Whereas now you do have, you've got chief customer officers and you've got chief experience people. So that's, I think, for us, kind of that's the move. That's what the future modern talent acquisition team looks like.
Right. So yeah, obviously tech is driving this, and data analytics is across everything at the moment, which is great. So, Rob, so, I suppose just share, how is the future talent model different from traditional recruitment?
Well, I think Áine has hit a lot on that, on all the key points, but definitely what we've seen, and even from my own experience in working 20-25 years in the industry, the traditional recruitment, I suppose, was very much around, the requirement got posted out there and applications came in. So really, I think what has changed, and the world has changed with all of this around, is that there's an always-on aspect of recruitment. The candidate as well has changed. So if we think about the always-on aspect of it, people are changing jobs much more regularly than 20-odd years ago. And as we were debating offline before, the nature of work itself, be remote, be hybrid, contingent work, fixed term, that kind of whole gig economy of workers. So there's a whole dynamic and shift with regards to that. Also, companies have to be out more and more in the public around why they're a great place to work, and communicating that, because the candidate, as Áine said, has completely changed. What they're looking for is very different to what they were looking for 20 years ago, I should say. But what we also see is that in traditional kind of recruitment methods, they're not to be thrown out. So you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater with it. What's interesting is that different techniques that might have been seen as old school are definitely still pliable to this day. So what we would say is that really what the difference is that, and Áine pointed to this, is that most organizations demand to know where the pipeline is going to come from, how they're going to get it, the insights behind it. And that whole structure now of an organization is much more detailed. So, I think Áine touched on a few of the job titles: insights analysts. So people who are able to kind of x-ray in and look at CVs, where candidates are coming from, how long they've stayed in different roles, understanding the nature of kind of what's going to be attractive to candidates and how do you articulate that. I saw a really interesting article, and it said that modern TA are going to be storytellers. So they're now around, how is my story reaching the candidates and the community that I need to reach? And I think the other aspect of it, and we might delve into this later on, is that, you know, the idea that you can just post on job boards now and all of a sudden candidates will come in. I think we all know that that doesn't necessarily work in isolation, and that there's a whole raft of things that need to happen alongside that to make candidates, you know, get into that application form. But we're also seeing that, you know, and again, this comes to some of the technology that's needed, is that you have to target your candidates. So we've often heard this from our clients with hiring managers around, you know, why am I not seeing my job on the top of Google search, you know? And you're kind of saying, well, look, that all depends on if that profile is looking and searching for a job and using Google as the method in which to get it. So, you know, it's trying to educate stakeholders around what way we need to reach their target audience. And sometimes they may not see the adverts because they're not the target audience that we're looking to get the message out to. So I think in summary, really, and it kind of leads on from what Áine was saying, I think the real traditional thing is that idea of the superhero with the cape doing all aspects of it, and they still do a lot of heavy lifting, needs assistance around it and needs pragmatic teams to help them stand out and, you know, engage with that top talent that they need.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thanks, Rob. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously this competitor analysis and looking at areas, isn't it, where your competitors might be, and they're going for that talent at the same time. So yeah, it's lots of clever stuff you can do now, which is great. Let's kick off with our first poll then. So this will come up on your screen in a moment. I'll read out the question and answer because it's a bit, we can only fit so many characters in on our webinar, but here we go. So which future talent function model aspect represents the most significant shift from traditional recruitment practices? So this is for you. So is it A, utilizing AI and machine learning for sourcing and screening tasks? Is it B, focusing on candidates' potential and aptitude rather than primarily on experience? Is it C, implementing tech-driven recruitment strategies? So things like augmented reality, virtual reality, blockchain powered. D, emphasizing diversity and inclusion in the recruitment process. Or finally, E, facilitating remote and hybrid working arrangements through flexible talent strategies. So if everyone can have a go at those, I'll leave you to sort of vote on those, and then well, let me come to our panel. Áine, let me come to you and just say, what do you think is going to come out top here? What are you thinking?
Oh, I don't know. They're all current priorities. I do think that, you know, probably the emphasizing diversity and inclusion is a massive piece for many businesses these days. But I think that will also feed into kind of focusing on the candidate's potential and aptitude, not experience, so that skills-based organization. But you know, really you could pick any of them. I think the hot topic is utilizing AI and machine learning for sourcing and screening. But I think we're in the early days of ChatGPT and on all the AI that's coming out. I think it'll have an impact, but I still think we're waiting to see what that impact's really going to be.
Rob, what are you going for?
Yeah, I think definitely AI and machine learning and the impact on, you know, on the recruitment and talent organization. Probably, as Áine said, it's the hot topic. You know, so I have a feeling that will come top of the poll. But then I think diversity and inclusion is probably second with regard to how organizations are approaching it. So I think they're my top two bets, but I've never been good at gambling, so I could be completely wrong.
Oh, that's it. Are you going to put your house on it? Your mortgage? Right. So, well, you've done very well. You've done very well. So the poll results are, yeah, exactly right. 52% utilizing AI, and then equal measures, really, the diversity and inclusion, and also flexible talent strategies. So, yeah, so pretty much what you said. No surprises, I guess, from the pair of you there.
No, I think it aligns with many of the conversations we're having on a daily basis with everybody.
All right, great. Let's move on then. So let's look at really future talent function model. So how can the future talent model help organizations find talent quickly, you know, and in large volumes? So I mean, that, Áine, where do you sit with this one?
Yeah, so I think we're back to that whole piece of complexity, and even the poll there that we looked at, with people kind of voting what they thought would be an impact. Each search, well, it sounds simple and you can say, oh, how do you, how's it going to impact? You have to come back to, well, what are we recruiting for? What's the level that we're recruiting for? And, how do we find that talent? So we always start off with a strategic sourcing plan, and if I kind of pick two different avenues here to give you an example of how I think the future talent functions can enable finding volume, when we're looking at kind of more professional staffing, okay, and particularly permanent hiring, and across kind of the tech sector, senior finance sector, life sciences, more complex niche type roles, then really we've got to come together with our teams and we've actually got to look at, well, how do we actually identify, attract and engage this professional talent, and then attract them to the opportunity with our particular client. So, this might be working with our internal marketing team, working with the client to, support them developing out their employee value proposition, or people value proposition through our Future Work Institute, creating that narrative, as Rob mentioned earlier, that storytelling is so important. These people are getting bombarded every day, and when they're getting the kind of the simple email that's like, hey, your profile looks like a match for this job. Do you want to send me your CV? That's not going to work. Okay. We've got to attract the talent. We've got to tell the story of why someone should want to work in this business. We've got to have all the information. That's where you bring in your candidate experience. What are the touch points, as we're going out there? And that whole complexity of hybrid working, remote working, and kind of passive candidate engagement, depending on what's the model of the organization we're partnering with, we've also got to look at our sourcing plan around that as well. So if they offer remote or kind of hybrid working, then that talent pool is way bigger. So we've got to bring in our AI tools where within our own systems that we've developed and partnered with tech companies on, we can now identify, say, a candidate profile, and then we can look for similar profiles. It's funny, I talked to a room full of tech people recently, and the thing that blew their mind, which they hadn't thought about, I was like, you need to write your CV almost with, with search engine optimization in mind. It's no longer just one person sitting down looking at a CV. It's actually automation. So the keywords need to be in there if you're looking for a new job, because those words are going to rank higher and you're going to be found in more searches, and then the actual TAs and recruiters are going to engage. So, that's kind of the two sides. So I think from a professional side, we've got all those pieces around engagement, attraction, the narrative, the EVP, the experience side. You then flip it on the other side and you have to take a different approach when you might be talking more around, say light industrial recruitment, or recruiting for, roles in call centers or retail, where it is more local, okay, where you are actually having to engage with a higher volume of people, but a wider talent base, and that's where we're starting to bring in things like our assessments. So if we have a high volume of applications going in and there's a lower entry to an actual role, how do we ensure that you have the right fit? We work with some clients in the aviation sector, and while the role might not need a high entry level, it does need to be people that are risk averse. So then we have to test for people's natural attitudes towards risk. They might have great customer service skills, they might have the educational requirements that are there, but if they're a little bit more risky, they can't work in that role. They need people who want to follow the line and follow the process. So I also think then the value of that human contact as well. So you might do your first or second layer of kind of screening through a high level amount of applications, and that gives you your speed, because all of this can be happening in a more automated, digital technology enhanced way. And then you get down to your smaller selection where you can actually get that one-to-one contact, through assessment days or through teams. So that's kind of how we approach it, and every search is slightly different, and back to this kind of multidisciplinary team, when you're trying to find talent quickly and in high volume, you've got to consider the type of candidates that you're actually targeting, the skill sets that the organization needs, and how you can automate and enhance that and ensure the positive experience, utilizing technology so that actually the human element of it, the authentic human element of it, is placed on a much more high value engagement tasks and partnership tasks as someone's going through the process.
I mean, and that's part of the volume sometimes can be the real problem, kind of, you know, for some of these hires, as you say, the volume to kind of work through, and then, as you say, to use technology to help an AI to do that, but then that humanistic part, because you want, as you said, and I really like the idea of storytelling, because I think it's so important, especially with, you know, people looking for very different companies to work for nowadays, aren't they?
Yeah, so. Yeah. You really do. You know, like one of the interesting shifts recently was actually working on graduate programs, and you know, there's actually a lot of competition for really strong graduate programs. And, you know, traditionally you might have had graduate programs where everyone has to send in their CVs and they wait till they have like 400 or 500 CVs, and then they all get manually screened in, you know, a particular month, and then all the invites go out to come in and meet. But the companies that were doing that were missing out on talent. So we had to have a shift where even you could go on, there was iPads, so like say grad fairs, careers fairs, you can go on, you can do your assessment if you have 10 minutes in the corner. Those rankings would flag straight up into the TA team, the early careers team. So then they could see anyone that's benchmarking high on the assessment, which is the high value talent, they could connect with them straight away and say, hi, do you want to come in and meet with us? Instead of waiting for the 500 CVs and a month of screening and then sending out the invite. So that's where, you know, a simple change that's technology enabled meant that that particular client is able to get that talent in a much faster way ahead of the competition in the market.
And we've got a question in actually, guys, so let me just share this one with you while we're kind of doing. So any questions, please do ask them. So thank you for this first question, Sandra. So if the candidate isn't good, I get a written presentation in CV, how does AI prevent drops? Well, hang on, let me just work this one out a second. Hang on. Because
it's all complex.
It's all about AI dropping the best candidate, or AI just identifies the sales style candidates who can't perform the job well. I'm trying to understand that system.
So I think that's probably, you know, the area I think where people are starting to think, well, will it all be up to the AI? And I think we can categorically say no. The AI, you know, that we've seen and you know, that we've utilized in our business is just a tool to get to a smaller group, or to allow us to actually get to the right CVs in a faster amount of time, instead of, you know, traditionally someone sitting at a screen and literally going through CV by CV by CV by CV by CV. But there's still that human element that's so fundamentally important. So, you know, again, like any technology, you know, or screening questions or assessments, AI is just a tool to, you know, speed up that process, but doesn't take out any of the actual, you know, ability to engage with talent. You know, and as I go back to kind of speaking around those roles in the past that might be more entry level. So, you know, again, people might not be as sophisticated at writing their CVs. They may not have, you know, a wide ranging, you know, experience to fill out a CV with loads of keywords, etc. That's where those assessments come in, you know. So we might have high volume applicants with that entry level, but actually it's the engagement, it's how they might do on, you know, risk assessments, it's their attitude to work, it's, you know, those, when we're doing screening, you know, meetings, that, you know, it's the person on the other end saying, well, how would you deal with a certain situation? How would you deal with a customer who was unhappy? How would you respond to a colleague, you know, that was, you know, under pressure for a certain task? Those competency-based questions are actually where we see people coming to the fore than just a flat CV, because actually everyone's right, the CV is only part of the story.
Sorry, go Rob.
No, sorry, I think Áine is right. I don't think companies are just going to kind of go, okay, AI will do all of that heavy lifting and screen. You know, there's also things like, you know, how do we build the AI to screen effectively? So organizations and people will have to be involved in that, you know. So I think there's a long way to go before people will entrust it all. And I think there's going to be work that companies will have to do, particularly ones that receive large volume of CV and applications, to make it effective and fair for people when they're applying. But equally, you know, the best talent will want, you know, will probably still have, people will still have to go out and get them. You know, so it's it's an interesting challenge in terms of where the AI can help and support in those areas.
I suppose, you know, the point is, as you're rightly saying, it's a case of you can't just rely on the CV, you can't just rely on the AI. And as you say, the assessment kind of gets around that. You've got to run it in tandem, haven't you, so that you don't lose those great candidates. So yeah, so okay, great. So hopefully we've answered that question for you. So let's move on then. Rob, what advantages, I guess, so, you know, we're going on saying nice, does outsourcing talent attraction offer? I guess in more competitive talent markets, perhaps, like pharma or fintech and the public sector. So where are we with outsourcing talent?
Yeah, I think certainly where we work with customers is we don't kind of always say every company can outsource and, you know, all the advantages are perfect in every shape or form. So a lot of times we do kind of work with customers to, you know, typically like a lot of firms, you do the build, you know, buy or partner kind of question with them, right? And typically what we see right now, and I suppose if you think about the marketplace in those areas, you know, unfortunately, there's been a lot of talent acquisition talent that have been made redundant or have lost their job, you know, across tech and pharma. And even before that, you know, what we're also seeing was that the trend or length of service was a challenge for organizations. Typically in the UK, it could have been a year. In Germany, it was a year and, you know, a year and 2 months potentially. So there was already strains prior to the changes in the marketplace. And I suppose if you look at that dynamic right now, you know, and I just read an interesting report on LinkedIn, which talked about talent acquisition and the job changes they're making. So a lot are moving away from talent into HR, into, you know, sales jobs, account managers, and that talent exodus will not come back. So what we also know in the marketplace right now, where you have companies that, you know, only in 2022, the market was the hottest it's ever been, certainly in across a number of jurisdictions. So changes can happen quickly, but that workforce and that cohort is not likely to come back quickly. And certainly they'll be reticent about coming back into permanent jobs, you know, in that regard. So what I think organizations have to kind of ask themselves some questions around is, do I risk building that again in the face of what I've just seen in the last kind of, you know, 6 or 9 months where we've probably had to let some colleagues go? Or do I think creatively around how I can build, and now that I understand what a modern TA function has to have, how am I going to build that internally? And is it easier to access that through an outsourced partner where I can kind of demand of them to bring in this innovation, to test the AI for me, you know, in safe environments, to kind of start to think about, you know, our marketing team is very focused on our product or our service or our platform. We're not focused on our employee engagement. So how do I get my partner to bring in their expertise of what they've seen work? So these are some of the reasons I think right now are the considerations I would say a lot of organizations have to go through when they're considering the outsourcing piece. You know, I think, you know, from our own perspective, what we see is that companies still have to think in that 1 to 5 year time frame. Okay, right now, and we know most economies are having a struggle. You know, unemployment is low in most of the major economies still. So there's challenges coming, and you know what? In 6-9 months, you know, things will change. Hopefully, things will be better. But you know, even not so, if that's 18 months away, organizations still need to plan around how they're going to scale up and meet that challenge. And we always see that right now, the most flexible way to do that is to engage with an outsourced partner, because typically the benefit of that is they can scale up and scale down, you know, but they can still have the expertise when they need it at their hand. Hope that makes sense.
Sorry, Peter.
I think you're on mute. The classic.
I haven't got my microphone now, have I? No, I haven't. I was doing my goldfish moment there for everyone. So apologies for that. Any questions you've got, please do pitch them in. Thanks, Rob, and thanks for reminding me there, Áine. So let's move on to our next question then. So Áine, what about added value can new talent acquisition models bring to permanent recruitment and contingent workforce programs?
Yeah, so I think following on from kind of what Rob discussed there, I think one of the biggest pieces, for any organization when you're looking at kind of a new talent acquisition model, or any sourcing is around that flexibility and agility. Because nowadays we also need to have, that kind of flexibility and agility combined with that talent analytics. So if we start off with, the majority of time when I'm starting to speak with clients around that talent function and why we developed it is actually around visibility and transparency. They need to have that window into their talent organization to enable them to be able to make strategic decisions on their workforce planning, on their future-proofing planning, what are the skill sets they're hiring today, and where is their company going, and what are the skill sets they're going to need in 5 years. Do they need to look at the talent organization today? Do they need to look at people coming into the organization today? And then what's the L&D pathway for them to fit into those jobs that aren't even in place today? You talk about manufacturing, manufacturing 4.0, when we talk about kind of this tech revolution, digitalization, AI, that's going to be across every industry. So, in our own industry, we're talking about, okay, what impact is it going to have, within recruitment, within talent solutions. But, you've seen many large organizations coming out over the last few years talking about, well, we're going to get rid of X amount of jobs by 2030 based on AI and automation. And while that might impact, certain levels, you've got to have that partnership with a modern acquisition team that's going to be able to feed into that. So what are the roles that are going to end up maybe moving towards automation? What are the skill sets of the people working those roles that can be put to use in other areas? How many tech people are you going to need to support the AI implementation and the project journey and the change management? So I think that partnership of talent analytics is really important. And that's one of the greatest values that I think, the kind of the modern talent acquisition team can bring. I think then we're also kind of looking at, this experience piece, and, we're all a bit more spoiled, I would say, like happily spoiled. I know my mobile phone is never far from my hand. I can do everything on it. I can, check in on how my son's school day is going. I can book all the appointments that I want. We're so used to that instant access and that really positive user experience. So, talent programs are no different. We've got to consider, years ago you could have certain systems and people would apply for a job and they'd have like this 20-page question of answer this, answer this, answer this, and you'd be rewriting and rewriting. And we just know that actually what we can see going through the journey of this kind of application experience is that, 60% of people are dropping off on page 3, that they're not getting the access. So you've got to consider every single step of that kind of experience point, from how are you engaging with talent? What's the story that you're telling them? How's their actual application process going to go? How do they interact with us as a business? Part of where we're moving towards on our kind of technology roadmap is also not just visibility and transparency for our clients and our hiring managers and the people that we're partnering with, but actually, how does the candidate know? I'm sure we've all been in that position at some point over our lives where we've sent in a CV and we really want that job. We've thought about it. We want to change it. And then you're like, no one's called me, or someone's called me, but I haven't heard back. Are they interviewing? Where's the CV at? So actually having that kind of portal where candidates can also come in and they can have visibility and transparency. So I think there's some of the bigger kind of the value adds. And then I think, still on that complexity journey now, we also have to consider how do we broaden the workplace environment? Because, a big part of that is diversity and inclusion. And, that's no longer just around, male and female or, different minorities. That's actually all the way through to kind of neurodivergent. How do we have a workplace that harnesses people who are neurodivergent, harness the skill sets they have, but how do we change our screening for that? How do we make it more inclusive? How do we position, a workplace to those people? And sustainability then is another piece. We've got a responsibility within our own organization, within our clients' organizations, to be part of that sustainability journey. So again, the value add of kind of the modern talent acquisition team is that we are thinking about not just how do we find talent, but all those wider pieces that are also really, really important to it. You know, when we come back to kind of the DE&I and sustainability pieces, you know, we manage large supplier networks. We manage, you know, third-party agencies on behalf of our clients. And, you know, if I speak to many procurement people that I deal with on a daily basis, they'll say one of the biggest values is that they don't have to no longer deal with, you know, contracts, onboarding, offboarding suppliers, managing them, etc. Because that is a piece in its own right. But, you know, again, our supplier programs are no longer just based on, right, is that agency sending in good CVs? How many roles are being released? You know, is it making it through the recruitment metrics? It's actually, you know, making sure that we're asking them to prove their sustainability goals, you know, that we have that social responsibility. We're working with them to look at how they're targeting, you know, from a diversity inclusion point. We're then managing that through so that we can actually build out diversity and inclusion dashboards to not just feed into the supplier network, but to feed into our own service provision, and also for the client to understand, right, you know, they want DE&I to happen. It's a big agenda for them internally. What is actually the talent pipeline? What's the talent pool looking like? What's the applications looking like? How does that translate across to interviews? How does that translate across to placements? And if there's dips in any part of that, what are the solutions around it? And I think, you know, the privilege we have in our daily jobs is that we get to actually interact with a lot of different companies with similar challenges, going through similar journeys, and we get to learn and share best practice. You know, again, people are living in their company, they get to see it in their window, we get to do it every day. So, you know, we do get to think about, okay, how do you look at DE&I? How do you attract different cohorts? How do we make that experience of an application, you know, easy for someone who might have a disability? So I think that the values can be wide and varied, but it just comes back to that continual piece of making sure that, you know, we've got skill sets that have the level of knowledge to think about this variety of complex challenges that actually come through a simple talent process.
I think, Áine, you know, you're right. It's very complex, isn't it? And gone are the days where a big tech company like Google would be the one that people would be drawn to, because people are looking for different things anymore. So even brands like that are having to work much harder. And I think you're right. DE&I, sustainability, it's all really, really paramount. And I like that. Yeah, I can see kind of coming to, you know, organizer like you've got this kind of a wealth of clients, you've got this kind of market area that you're kind of into all the time, so that shared learning and is much bigger than perhaps one company can do. So I can kind of completely get that. Let's move on to our next poll then. So this will pop up on your screen in a moment, so please have a go at this one as well. So this one is, given the advantages of outsourcing talent attraction in highly competitive markets, which benefit of a new talent acquisition model would most impact your organization? So let's see what you think about this one. So is it A, better access to talent and market insights, kind of what we just spoke about, more effective management and recruitment for contingent workforce programs? C, increased efficiency in the hiring process by leveraging external expertise and resources. D, acceleration of the hiring process, reducing time to hire. Or E, ability to leverage industry specific knowledge and networks of outsourcing partners. So if everyone has a go at that, Rob, I'll come to you first for this one to say, what do you think here is going to come out top?
If I get these right, Peter, I think I'll have to buy the lotto after this session. So in my own mind, I'm thinking that it'll be a combination of the better access to talent and market insights, the leveraging industry knowledge and outsourcing partners, and then probably more effective management of the contingent workforce. So I'd probably think more effective management of contingent workforce might be number one. Number two, better access to talent. Number three, leveraging the industry knowledge. They're my three guesses of what will come.
I've noted those, Rob. Thank you.
You know, we both work in jobs where we have to be very decisive, but I feel in these polls I'm being more indecisive, because, you know, I end up in conversations about all these pieces on a daily basis. I think a common theme is definitely the better access to talent and to market insights. So I would see that ranking high. But I do think that the contingent workforce, and the complexity of that is a significant piece for a lot of organizations, and that access to flexible talent. So I'm going to pick those two, and we'll see what comes out. And if we're not right, we're going to have to take some learning lessons.
This is just what we audience are thinking at the moment. So well, let's feed the results in then. So don't buy that lottery ticket just yet, Rob. I mean, you're not far out. But, so yeah, it really 26% really pipped it. Just acceleration of the hiring process, reducing time is number one. 22% leverage of industry specific knowledge and outsourcing, number two, and then the rest are split. So yeah, any thoughts on that, Áine?
Yeah, I mean, it's when we talk about the modern acquisition team, you're still ranking high on those key traditional benchmarks. How do we get the talent? How do we get it in fast? And I think that's, it's the bread and butter of everything. Organizations, we know it ourselves in our own selves internally. If you have new roles, you've created them and you've got sign off for them, you want to hire them as quickly as possible to get that work done. Or if you lose a key person of talent within your organization, you want to get them in. I think that really speaks to the needs of the actual users of programs, the hiring managers. They need that talent to make their job work. So it's probably not unsurprising. I think that's probably the core of it, and everything else is the value add and the cream on top.
Yeah, great. Rob, obviously disappointed, but
yeah,
another day.
Yeah, I wanted to spread it around. No, but I think, yeah, as Áine, I think as called it correctly there, the key metric is always that time to hire, but also quality of hire coming in that time frame. So it probably leads into all of the other elements that lead to that kind of better quality of hire.
So let's move on then. So I guess let's talk about what kind of circumstances might an organization benefit from the support of an outsourced talent management expert like your good self. So Rob, give us your kind of thoughts on that one.
Peter, we might have touched on that one. Just we discussed that earlier on, just around the benefits of the outsourcing decision. I'm happy to go over it again, but maybe your audience might not want that.
Maybe we covered that one slightly off. Okay.
Yeah.
So what about specific examples then of sort of talent attraction strategies then? So have you got, that, I mean, real-time examples are always fantastic, aren't they? So, how do you attract top talent efficiently and effectively?
Yeah, no, and it's a great question, and kind of comes in from the idea where we would see outsourcing or what talent organizations have to do when they factor in this. So look, what we've done when we've worked with a number of companies is it has to start with kind of, your strategy and your research. So who is really the big question that we ask, identifying the target candidates that you want to go after, and also where are they in that piece? Because, too often, as we say, with traditional recruitment, the idea was you went large and you went public and you went as wide as possible to gain that piece in. But again, what data shows us is that targeted approaches are the much better way, much more effective way of attracting that talent. But you have to know where to go, and you have to do that research first and foremost. So it's a bit like anything else. If you don't do the prep work to know where your talent is and who they are, then you can't really start to drive that. The next part of that then is the kind of what. So what's the objective of this plan, right? And how are you going to engage with them, and what content are you going to share with them? So, you'll often see job specs, but then candidates will want to see more than that. And as we often see, candidates that are looking at jobs will often look at 3 or 4 pieces of research around the company itself rather than just the job itself before they apply. So what's your content strategy around what you're saying about yourself and how you're communicating to that audience as well? So you've got to kind of create content strategy around what your go-to message is. Then the activation is, and this comes back to the targeted piece around how are you going to communicate and what are the channels that you're going to use. So again, and I know we've talked about this before around, Do you get it up on every job board? Do you have it out on your LinkedIn profiles and your company pages? Do you post it? Well, ultimately, it's coming back to find what are the channels that most are effective for you. So some job boards are much better at kind of administration or financial staff or life sciences capability. So knowing which they are is a better way to engage us in that regard. Also, in terms of you have to be, you know, we talked about this earlier on around storytelling. So if you're going out to hire a bunch of people, what is your story and how are you telling it? I often think about this, and we've worked with a customer where we looked at their need for hiring as almost like a product launch, like a marketing launch. And we looked at all of the facets that the company was going to do around a particular location. So for example, you know, radio actually was going to be a key effective tool in that area, in that region where this company was hiring. So it wasn't all bolted in online. It was actually, we looked at a radio dimension that would actually increase the listener, you know, people listening in, high listenership in that area. So all of these aspects are quick ways of activating and getting that community. And, you know, when we think about this with their customers, it's how do we get that message out? And then what content are we creating and sharing with them? So for example, you know, you'll often see employee testimonials now, you know, where people will say, this is what it's like to work here and this is my experience. But we've often run webinars like this, Peter, with the site leads in organizations or the HRD leads based on key themes that we've identified with them that they want to send out to the marketplace. So what does that mean? Well, it means that somebody applying for that job gets to see what it looks like at a human level. They hear the site lead or the HRD talking about themselves as an organization. And I suppose what's good about that is then your talent acquisition team can use that as content fodder to engage with candidates. Because you know yourself, when you're hiring right now, yes, you want to get people, but you also need to educate that community around who you are. So not everyone has a name or a brand that people will be familiar with. So part of it is that education and awareness of here we are, this is what we do. We're an amazing organization. You've probably never heard of us in lots of situations. We get that a lot. So it's how do they tell that message and activate it in the right channels? And then ultimately, you know, as well, you have to then track and measure that, okay? And what I would say, and it's an unfortunate one, there isn't just one bullseye of a channel that says, that's the channel, that's the one you put all, a bit like my scenario, you put it all on black and then we get the roulette wheel to work for us and it'll all come back. It is not like that. You've got to have many different channels working for you, and also your TA team working those channels, amplifying the message that's gone out there, and then tracking the results of it to know what has worked. How did that, you know, how was that effective in the community? Did we reach the candidates that we wanted to do? So there's some of the ways that we work with customers that's an effective campaign, but it starts with the research and the strategy of what you're trying to do, and it comes back to then to measuring it and tracking it. That makes sense. So hopefully that kind of gives you a picture.
Yeah, it's almost a real marketing piece, isn't it? In terms of your target audiences, where how you're going to reach them, and what the messaging is. I remember going to with my son, like a careers convention type thing, and an engineering company I'd never heard of, and the guy there pitched it really well, because he kind of, when he started talking about what they actually did, they worked, you know, they did parts for Formula One, for aerospace, for some sustainable sorts of, you know, there was lots and lots of stuff that they did that really excited then, you know, the sort of young talent coming through. So yeah, really important again. Áine, just on cost, obviously we're in challenging times. So what are the cost considerations and I guess potential cost savings with outsourcing talent attraction to you know, talent, sort of specialized talent expert, compared to building, you know, that in-house? Because obviously building the in-house team is going to cost as well. So
yeah, so you know, again, a conversation I have on a regular basis with potential clients and with clients, you know, and the cost sensitivity is a really big part of it. And I actually think most people are actually surprised at the significant cost savings that actually can be found with partnering with an outsourced provider or expert. You know, we look at it from kind of two different directions. You know, for kind of real life examples, particularly in this current market, as you know, as we alluded to earlier, you know, we're definitely in in a kind of an economic climate at the moment. Things are a little bit more reserved. You know, companies, you know, have ramped down on their talent acquisition teams, but that doesn't mean that things might not change quickly, all right? And what we've seen in the past, and you know, with clients, is actually that kind of that project RPO. So it's not necessarily the 3 to 5 year gig, and the 3 to 5 year, you know, RPOs are great, and a fundamental, you know, can build a massive solution for clients that can have year after year cost savings. But actually, you know, if you've got a ramp that's suddenly needed of say 100 people, and you know, you haven't got that, you don't want to take the time to build it in-house. You don't have the luxury of that time, the cost to build it in-house. You want to lean into a partner that can bring all those disciplines together in a very fast way to enable you to get the talent that you need in the time that you need it. And that can be, you know, there's an investment to do it in that time, but actually the value you're getting from that investment is great, and you're able then to get the talent into your organization to potentially meet, you know, new client commitments that you have, or you know, to fast forward where your business is actually looking to go. I think then when we come into kind of the contingent workforce, if I can kind of focus a little bit on that for the moment, because I think when it comes to kind of cost savings and cost avoidance, the contingent workforce side of it is very significant. Okay, so similar to the RPO side of it, you do definitely still have your, you know, your cost savings of having an access to an expert multidisciplinary team, and you know, that advice on how you find talent. You know, we went back to the poll earlier where it was the time to hire, where you have people that live in that time to hire every single time. You're not going out to a multitude of third-party agencies potentially. You've got one talent acquisition partner that's able to ramp and flex to meet with a dedicated delivery team, which can give you significant cost savings. But beyond just the cost savings, I think the bigger piece then is also the cost avoidance. Okay, and you know, while are two different things, but when I think about cost avoidance, particularly in kind of contingent workforce solutions, it's not just around the kind of the recruiter and the talent acquisition. Often my RPO teams versus my MSP, I've one director and she's always laughing. She goes, I know, we only do half the job. They don't. They do an amazing job on the RPO side. But MSP, you have to go beyond just recruiting talent, onboarding talent, making sure that talent is compliant. You know, if we're talking about contractors in the UK, making sure, are they in scope of IR35? Are they out of scope of IR35? If they're under, you know, umbrella companies, do the umbrella companies have the right insurances and liabilities that have to come in from that aspect? We're talking about working visas, right to work. You know, if you're hiring someone, you know, are you checking the right to work? If their visa is going to be up in 3 months' time, who's managing that? Who's monitoring it? The classification of workers. You know, for anyone who's kind of been reading newspapers over, you know, on a global scale, we've seen some large household brand name and also educational institutions that in the last few weeks have been potentially facing massive tax bills for the misclassification of casual workers or the misclassification of workers. And that's where outsourcing to a provider that lives in it every day, you know, that has in-house legal teams, compliance teams, that has technology that's built to support those areas is a massive piece of actually, you know, it might not be a direct cost saving, you're not cutting a saving out, but there's a massive piece of cost avoidance that's going on there. And I would say that is one of the greater values of a contingent workforce program that's run well, is not just our ability to find the talent and find the talent in the time, which is important, but it's that compliance and regulatory piece. And, you know, that HR management piece as well, because we're all wonderful humans, and, you know, like many wonderful humans and authentic humans, you know, nothing's perfect. People will have different challenges. You know, we have to train my HR teams and my on-site teams around mental health first aid. You know, post pandemic, we're seeing more people with mental health issues, you know, potential health challenge issues where they're coming to us as their HR function because we're managing them as a contingent workforce. You know, so there's so much that actually goes into the complexity of it, and that, you know, I think that is a massive cost avoidance that feeds into that overall cost saving. And, you know, for anyone who's kind of in that, you know, they haven't got to kind of an MSP point of view, a contingent workforce program, and they might have multiple temp coming through from multiple different agencies, that visibility and transparency is often lacking. They don't have control over it. They don't have assurance that those things are happening in the right way. And like, hand on heart, we've got a really good spend save report, which captures cost savings for a lot of our MSPs. And the savings captured, are actually can be in the hundreds of thousands, depending on the size each year. So, people who might be considering MSPs, it can often be thought of, oh, it's going to be very costly. But actually, when you break it down, when you bring all that together, you can actually find you reap a lot of cost savings by actually moving into a more programmatic, centralized type function.
Yeah, it's very complicated, and as you say, compliance is such an important part of this. So, okay, let's do, just in essence of time, about 5 minutes to go. So let's do our final poll. This one will pop up on your screen again for the last one. So please have a go at this last one. What is your biggest talent challenge right now? So it's very direct. So is it A, attraction, so discovering and attracting top tier talent to your organization? Is it engagement, maintaining the motivation and commitment of your existing workforce? I said exhausted then. Retention, ensuring the continuity of skilled employees in your organization? Or D, skill development, so implementing effective training programs to deliver impactful L&D outcomes? Or finally, E, adaptation, so transitioning smoothly to new technologies and innovative recruitment strategies. So Áine, I'm going to come to you first, if I may. What are you going to go for?
I'm going to go for the top two in equal priority. I think attraction, like a lot of companies, again, depending on where they're at in their current landscape, it's still quite challenging. Unemployment is low, so everyone is still really focused on attracting that top tier talent when they need it. But equally, well, actually, sorry, 1 and 3 is probably my answer, retention, because, attracting talent's one side, but retaining that talent is so important for your organization. So they're my two top choices.
Okay, Rob?
I'm gonna go a different direction now on this one. I'm gonna go with skills development. I think is as the number one that'll come out, and then probably adoption of innovation and technologies is number 2. So I'm going the other side of the coin there, just to spread it out.
Well, again, don't buy that ticket. Really, don't buy that ticket. Well, you're not far out. So let's share the results. So actually, retention, retention, which is Áine sort of alluded to, 38%, 31% adaptation. So that was your second one, Rob, wasn't there? And then 19% attraction, and then 26% for engagement and skill. We're rapidly run out of time, so I won't come back for any comments on that one, but that's just something to pause for some thought there. So let's move on to sort of pretty much our final question. And Áine, if I can just come to you for this last one. So this is a bit of a sum up, really, isn't it? Is what's best practice? What's best practice should organizations consider when outsourcing talent attraction to ensure, a really successful partnership? And I think, ultimately, achieve the right desired results, maintain compliance, which we just spoke about, and relevant regulation. So what's best practice?
I would say, and I'll keep it short and sweet. Partnership is crucial to any outsource relationship. And I was going to say partnership, but really having a true partnership, because ourselves and our clients are continually evolving, continually changing. The talent landscape is continually changing. We've got to have flexibility to adapt. We've got to have that partnership to, if we face any challenges, to overcome them together, to bring the solutions together. And I think one of the recommendations I always make when we're going into a new partnership with a client is making sure that we have a senior governance committee. And the senior piece that is critical here, because it needs to have senior stakeholders who have the gravitas and the internal influence, that if there are challenges, they can quickly get through those bottlenecks. And those challenges can be quite simple. It might be that interviewing is a bit slow because the hiring managers are busy, but it's that senior stakeholder and the client needs to be able to influence that. And likewise, similar to Rob's role, and he's often part of this governance committee in our large programs as that voice of the customer, that if a client has a particular challenge, he can come back into CPL as a group and go, okay, how do we solution this? How do we bring a solution fast to our clients to meet the challenge that they're facing today? So you know, in short and sweet, I think that approaching it as an actual partnership, that it's a two-way street together, and having that governance of those stakeholder groups to ensure that continual success is measured on both sides.
Thanks, Áine. Well, we have literally run out of time. It was an hour, it flies, doesn't it? So listen, everyone, we hope you've imparted some key learning, insight, best practice and methodology to help you with your future talent acquisition, which will involve a variety, I'm sure, of specialized roles that collaborate to attract, engage and hire top talent whilst enhancing your organization's employee brand and aligning with the business strategy. We see how that's really all vitally important. Thanks. My thanks today to Rob and Áine for your wonderful insights and knowledge, and also to CPL's Talent Evolution Group for partnering with us. And thank you, listen, all of you for joining us on a hot day and for taking part with the polls, and look forward to seeing you soon at another of our events. So thank you very much. Thanks, Áine. Thanks, Rob. Nice to see you. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you, Peter.
Take care. Bye.